Shana Tova. May this be a good, sweet, and peaceful year for us and the entire household of the people of Israel. So what do we do when things break? What do we do with broken lives, with broken hearts, with broken trust? How do we repair something that has shattered? Is it even possible? In Israel this past summer, at a museum in Haifa, a 4-year-old boy named Ariel Geller decided he wanted to have a look inside a big clay vase that sat on a pedestal. Now, this vase dated from the time of Abraham and Sarah, somewhere between 2200 BCE and 1500 BCE. The artifact stands about 3 feet high. Too high for young Ariel to peer inside. I think you know where this is going, right? As Ariel reached for the vase, it toppled and shattered. A vase that had somehow remained whole since the time of the patriarchs was no match for a 4-year-old. When I saw a photograph of the wreckage of this vessel laying on the floor of a museum in the north of Israel, I could not help but think that it was symbolic of the many things that have shattered in that country and in the Jewish world since last Rosh Hashanah. In Israel, there are so many shattered lives. More than 1,400 Israelis have died. More than 5,000 have been wounded. 251 people were taken hostage on October 7th. 154 were released or recovered dead. 97 remain, and no one knows how many of them are alive. The fact that they still languish in captivity almost a year later has shattered a sacred trust in Israel. October 7th shattered Israel's understanding of itself as a country whose entire identity was based upon Jews being able to protect themselves in their own land. It shattered trust in the IDF, the intelligence services, the Prime Minister, and the government. And while these past few weeks have gone a long way to restore some of that trust, there's a long way to go. It shattered communities in the south, such as Nir Oz and Be'eri, which had been there since the founding of the country. It has shattered the lives of thousands and thousands of people who had to flee from the north. It shattered Gaza, both people and property. It shattered the image of Israel in much of the world. Here in America, October 7th shattered the belief that Jews are only in danger over there, across the ocean, but never in America. As the late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs observed, Jew hatred mutates through the ages, and anti-Zionism is simply its most recent incarnation. How many of us were shocked to discover anti-Semitic tropes and memes surfacing in our children's classrooms on campuses, in our workplaces and beyond. Places that we always felt accepted. It shattered friendships. People who no longer feel that they can talk with one another after seeing some of their posts online, or vice versa. For some, it shattered the ability of parents to speak about Israel with their own children, or grandparents with their grandchildren in any sort of meaningful way. What do we do when things break? What do we do with broken hearts, with broken trust, with broken lives? The story of Ariel Geller does not end with brokenness, though. It does not end with broken trust. What followed in his story was both unexpected, remarkable, and very Jewish. Once the museum assessed that the breakage was not vandalism, but the work of a curious boy, Dr. Inbal Rivlin, the director of the museum, reached out directly to the family. Dr. Rivlin explained that the workers in the museum were worried about Ariel. How was he dealing with what happened? Ariel was treated to a special tour of the museum and even allowed to reconstruct his very own vase. Dr. Rivlin said that the museum had made it a point to respond to the incident with Rachamim, with compassion. What struck me was the director's use of the word Rachamim, or compassionate caring, to describe the museum's actions. In the midst of a terrible war, in the midst of everything that was going on, Dr. Rivlin and the staff of the museum did not lose their sense of empathy or compassion. The word Rachamim is derived from the Hebrew word for a mother's womb, rechem. It points to a powerful attachment between a mother and a child who was conceived and developed within her body. Rachamim is not pity, and it is far more than empathy. Rather, it is an expression of genuine concern based upon a deep attachment and desire for the well-being of a person. It's a response that emanates from our kishkas, from the inner recesses of our being, that compels us to act on their behalf. Rachamim is so powerful that it is one of the attributes of God. And the greatest example of Rachamim in the entire Bible comes from Rachel Imenu, our matriarch Rachel. Tomorrow, when we read the prophecy of Jeremiah, he will be speaking at a time when the people of Israel were feeling pretty broken. They were in exile and they were suffering because of their sins and God's judgment. According to Jeremiah, it was Rachel's voice that pierced the heavens, her cry on behalf of her children, that caused God to move from a place of judgment to one of mercy. Ko amar Adonai, kol beramah nishma. A cry is heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping. Rachel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children who are gone. Thus says God, restrain your voice from weeping, your eyes from shedding tears, for there is a reward for your labor, declares God. They shall return from the enemy's land. Rachamim has the power to shake the very heavens and move God to act to repair a broken Jerusalem and a people in exile. This past year, amidst all of the breakage, all of the death, all of the destruction, the voice of a different Rachel has pierced our hearts. Rachel Goldberg Poland, a Chicagoan who graduated from what was then called the Anshe Emet Day School. I'm looking right at Gary Weisserman, the headmaster of the Bernardzell Anshe Emet Day School, when I say those words. She and her husband, John, they made Aliyah. They raised their 3 children in Israel. On October 7th, their world shattered when their son Hirsch was taken hostage at the Nova Music Festival. And since that harrowing day, all that Rachel and John had to cling to from their son was those chaotic images of his capture, featuring his badly injured arm and 2 text messages that read, "I love you," and "I am sorry." Of course, we've all come to know Hirsch through his mother's eyes as she traveled relentlessly through the world to seek his release. From the hundreds of interviews that she gave with every possible news outlet, to her meetings with the Pope, world leaders, including President Biden, to hear her speech at the United Nations, and the Democratic National Convention. Rachel even went to the border of Gaza with a loudspeaker system and called out to her son Hirsch to be strong. She made her voice heard, and people listened. So what was it that made Rachel so compelling? Her strength, her moral character, her eloquence, her remarkable ability to communicate, they all contributed. But what moved us most was the same thing that touched the heart of God, according to Jeremiah. It was the voice of Rachamim, the deep compassion of a mother crying for her child that was evident every time she spoke. The connection with the child that she had carried in her womb, which translated into an urgency that resonated from every word. Fearlessly and with a remarkable openness, Rachel Goldberg Poland offered a lesson for all of us about the Jewish approach to Rachamim and its power to shake the heavens and the earth. This is how she began her speech at the United Nations. "My name is Rachel, and I'm the mother of Hirsch Goldberg Poland. He's my eldest child, and he is my only son. Today is the 67th day that Hirsch is being held hostage in Gaza." Rachel's Rachamim always began with her son, but it never ended there. As acute as her pain was, Rachel knew that others shared a similar agony. Rachel always presented herself as a representative of all of the hostage families. Here's how she continued that day. In Gaza, at this very moment, as we all stand here, there are 138 being held. They range in age from 10 months to 85 years old. They are from all nations around the globe. They are Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. They have not been attended to nor treated by any international organization that exists. They are injured, they are starving, they are in pain, they are in fear, they are in torment, and they are dying. In this way, Rachel Goldberg Poland modeled the Jewish understanding of Rachamim, which starts with those closest to us and then moves outward, acknowledging other people's religions, other nations. It begins with one's family, one's people. To move from the particular to the universal is anything but tribal. It is both natural and it's very Jewish. What was striking about Rachel's Rachamim was the lack of anger. And she most certainly had reason to be enraged. Instead, Rachel worried about maintaining her humanity. She said, Do I aspire to be human, or am I swept away in the enticing and delicious world of hatred? This is not a phenomenon unique to Israel or Gaza. This is everywhere on our planet, she continued. I understand that hatred of the other, whoever we decide that other is seductive, sensuous, and most importantly, it is easy. Hatred is easy, she said. Love is hard. Rachel Goldberg Poland did the hard thing and displayed the type of love, the type of deep connection of caring that emanates from Rachamim. She did not miss the opportunity to speak about those Gazans, especially the children who were caught in the crossfire, even while her own son languished in one of Hamas's tunnels there. And at the same time, she was also quick to defend the many ways that the state of Israel has tried to protect the citizens of Gaza, while Hamas has done everything to put them in harm's way. As we know too well, Hirsch was murdered along with 5 other hostages as the IDF came closer to the tunnels in which they had been imprisoned. Rather than allow the hostages to be freed, their Hamas captors made the easy choice, the inhuman choice. They chose hate and murdered them at point-blank range. Even in her eulogy for Hirsch, Rachel Goldberg Poland gave expression to the expansive power of Rachamim. She began with her son and immediately moved to offering words of comfort to the other families whose children were murdered that day as well, and then offered a prayer that Hirsch would mark, quote, a turning point in this terrible situation. She moved from the particular to the universal, even as her son Hirsch lay before her. Out of the breakage, out of the horror, Rachel Goldberg Poland exuded Rachamim. And the approach she modeled is an important one for us as we begin a new year. From all indications, this coming year will likely be equally challenging for Jews in Israel and around the world. It turns out that 3,000-year-old Canaanite pots are easier to repair than the world in which we inhabit. There are cities that may never be rebuilt, kibbutzim that may never be repopulated, and Jewish communities that may never feel the same sense of security. The same people who did not stand with us this past year will likely not stand with us in the new year. Campus protests and marches through the streets of cities like Chicago will continue. Our mayor will likely continue to cheer them on. Tensions will flare. World opinion will continue to be decidedly anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian. Anti-Semitism will not be going away anytime soon. While we may not have the power to stop every threat, we do have control over how we respond. And the 2 Rachels have shown us the Jewish way. Remember that Rachamim begins with your own family, your own community, your own people, and then it moves to the wider world. Rachamim is dependent on a feeling of connectedness that emanates from within. We are one extended Jewish family, and that includes those with whom you disagree within the Jewish community. There is something decidedly un-Jewish about writing off other Jews who have views that you reject. That includes the duly elected government of the State of Israel. Criticize when warranted. Fight for what you believe in. But Jews must never, never walk away from each other. No matter how tempting, how seductive it might feel. We are a large Jewish, often dysfunctional family, connected to God and to each other through a covenant that began with Abraham and Sarah, was consecrated at Sinai. It is the thread that binds us together forever. The thousands marching in Israel each week are deeply critical of the government, but they are also marching with Israeli flags in their hands. That flag connects all Israelis. And this should be the approach of the American Jewish community as well. Let us have honest conversations. Let us express ourselves fully and demand to be heard. But let us never forget that our tradition, our peoplehood, our history compels us to begin from a place of family connection, animated by Rachamim. Let us take Rachel Goldberg Poland's words to heart. Hate is easy, love is hard, and I would add, Rachamim offers us a unified path forward. Let us raise our voices here in America. The goals of those who stand against us is to shame us into silence, to shout us down, to label us in ways that challenge our morality or question our humanity. And if we say nothing, it will only lend credence to their hateful rhetoric. If we hide our Judaism, it may spare us the discomfort in the moment. But as a long-term strategy, it will prove to be disastrous, just as it has been throughout Jewish history. It is our great privilege to live in the United States of America, and Jews have agency in this country if we choose to use it. We have the privilege of being part of the most powerful Jewish diaspora community in all of Jewish history, living in the country that has given us more freedoms than any other. Let us embrace the promise of America as Jews. And that would include how we engage politically and how we use our votes. So let us not be afraid to express ourselves, whether it is in the words we use or the symbols that we wear. Remember, we are modeling behavior for the generations to come. Let us continue to reach out to those outside of our community who wish to be in dialogue with us. It is vital that we distinguish between questions that are genuine and questions that are born of hatred. We are not obligated to engage in dialogue with those waving Hamas flags or calling for global intifada. However, there are far more people in this country who are simply uninformed about the actual reality of Israel, whose opinions are too often shaped by 2-minute videos on the internet. When the opportunity presents itself, let us not shy away from hard conversations, to listen and to speak clearly and forcefully, representing ourselves and the actual facts of Israel's history and our deep connection to our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael as proud Jews. As proud Jews. And at the same time, the Jewish attribute of Rachamim does not permit us from looking away from the Palestinians or free us from working toward a better path forward, but not at the expense of the safety of Israelis. Let us be clear. Israel is at war with Iran, which is led by an extremist Islamic messianic regime whose religious ideology calls for the destruction of the state of Israel and the killing of Jews around the world. Rachamim also demands that when your Jewish family is in danger, Jews put aside their differences and they stand with Israel. It is Rosh Hashanah, the day that we sound the shofar to ring in a new year and awaken us to its possibilities. Over the centuries, the sound of the shofar called our people to war, to hear the cry in the midst of the horror, as well as to call our people to stand as one. Since October 7th, Jews in Israel and around the world have experienced these different calls at once. Our rabbis noted long ago that we sound the shofar from the narrow end, so that the sound can come out of the wider end. We move from the particular to the universal. And if we try and sound the shofar from the wide end, you will hear nothing. Nothing. We can only bring a Jewish sound in the world when we blow from the narrow and when we take the ruach, the air inside of us, beginning with our own family, beginning with our own people, and expand it for others to see and hear. So let the blasts of the shofar contain the Rachamim of Rachel, one ancient and one modern, that deep, empathetic caring for one another that is born from the core of our being. And may we be blessed with a sweet year. May we be blessed with a better year. And may our brothers and sisters in Israel and all people be blessed with an end to the bloodshed in a safer, more secure world. May we be among those who work to repair that which has been broken in the spirit of Rachamim. Ken Yiratzon. So too may it be the will of God.
Amen.